Hi friends, it's Linda, and I am back to start my latest Christmas journal, and it is going to be a Reader's Digest journal made from a Reader's Digest hardback book that I have taken the pages out of. And I'm going to just show you how I start this process and how what I gather and how kind of the beginning decisions that I make when I start to make a journal. So I'm going to break this video up into, this one's going to be relatively short, and then I'll do another video where we create pockets and create ephemera and then do some fabric and beading and some finishing touches. So anyway, so when I make the decision of what type of journal I'm going to make, then I can kind of proceed with choosing papers and such. When I make a journal from a Reader's Digest condensed book, my choice becomes, first of all, to decide, is this spine going to be wide enough so that I can use the spine that is in the book, or is my journal going to be larger so that I need to actually create a brand new spine? And for the most part, these journals, for me, I try to use the original spine, although I've done them both ways. So I'm going to show you how I make what's called a hidden spine when I do these Reader's Digest journals. So I use a product called Craftex, and you can buy it in different forms. I bought it in a roll, and it was a small, tighter roll when I first bought it, but you can buy it in sheets as well, and it comes in different colors. I've got this, it's just a little bit of an off-white. It's not a bright white, but it's not an ivory. And it is a fabric paper. So it has elements of like a thick fabric, or like a thick paper, and also fabric. So it is durable enough to use as a spine. It's not thick enough to use by itself, so if you were using this to create a spine, you would also have to use chipboard or whatever. But for me, if I use the Reader's Digest spine that's already in the book, I can use the Craftex right over the top. And I will sew my signatures right into the Craftex. So let me show you. I already cut my little piece out, if I can find it. Here it is. This is my piece of the Craftex that I cut to size. So what I do first of all is I will take a piece of cardstock and I will trace the inside of the spine and make a template. Then I can use that template to cut out my piece of Craftex that I'm going to use for the hidden spine. Then I will also use this template. As you can see, I have several templates that I've saved. Once I make one, I save it because oftentimes I'll use that same template again. This is the one I created for a 3-signature. See, I even wrote on here, Reader's Digest 1 3/4 inch spine, 3 signatures, 3-stitch pamphlet. And I marked the top. So I have done this with a 5 signature, with with a 5 pamphlet stitch. I have a template for that one. I have a template for one that just has 2 signatures. So I just save these and then I can reuse them. And I'll use this when I make the holes in my individual signatures to bind it. And then I'll also use this to mark onto here, onto the hidden spine where I'm going to sew the signatures. Sometimes I cover this with fabric, or you can even cover it with paper. A little bit of it, if I leave it white, will show in between the signatures. You know how when you're in between signatures looking in a journal, you can see the base of it. I don't mind this being this off-white in this case, but if it was something that wouldn't work, then I would cover this with fabric. A lot of times if I'm going to cover the whole spine with a piece of fabric, I will cut that strip long enough to also cover the spine. But this one, I believe I'm going to cover with a large doily. So I'm not going to do a fabric. So therefore, I'm also not going to cover my hidden spine. I hope that makes sense, and that it doesn't sound like I'm speaking in a different language. But anyway, so I wanted to show you kind of how I prepare. So I had to decide, do I want 2 signatures, 3 signatures? Will this work? Or do I need to create a wider spine so that it'll accommodate more pages? And I decided to leave it just like it is and just cut this piece. So now the next portion is, or the next step for me is choosing my papers. I just set that aside, sorry for reaching. So what I do is, when I'm getting ready to create a new journal, is once I know about how many signatures I'm going to want, is I start gathering papers. And I have a little bit of a system for this. For this one, it's going to be a 3-signature journal. And I usually like to have a smaller decorative element to use either in the center or somewhere in the journal. And I thought for this one, I would use a Christmas card. So I chose a variety of Christmas cards, and I'll use one in each of the signatures. So that's going to be one of my pages. I decided what I would do is create 3 signatures of 8 pages each, 8 sheets each, which will be actually 16 pages per signature. So the entire journal, if you count the front and the back, will have 50 pages. And for a Christmas journal, I feel like that's enough. If it was for a daily, everyday journal, I would probably make the spine wider and put more pages in each signature. But I think for these purposes, that's going to work. So this is going to be one of my pages. Of the 8 is going to be a card. Then I decided in each of the 3 signatures, I wanted something, kind of another interesting feature. So for one of them, one of the signatures will have a paper bag. One of the signatures, I saved this old-fashioned mix I buy for my husband every year because it's so nostalgic to him. It reminds him of his childhood. And I thought this was just the cutest packaging. So I'm going to put this into one of the signatures. And then for the third signature, I'm going to use this envelope that I've already kind of gotten ready, gotten signature ready. So this is going to be my kind of interesting element. I have a card element, so those are going to be 2 pages in each journal. I'm also in each journal, in each signature, I'm going to have text or music. So I chose this for one of the signatures, this for one of the signatures, and then one of the signatures is going to have a music page. And then I also wanted to choose another, I like to choose a variety of different types of papers in my journals. So I pulled a page out of a Christmas magazine. I pulled the Christmas cactus page from a vintage gardening book. And I pulled this winter page from a Edith Holden. So one of the signatures is going to have those. I always like to have lined paper as one of my signature pieces. So one of the signatures will get this piece of coffee dyed loose leaf. One of the signatures will get this children's ledger, and one is going to get this kind of old graph ledger. Each signature will have 3 pages of plain coffee dyed paper. So that's a total of 9. And then each of the signatures will also have a large piece of scrapbook paper for the first page in the signature. I almost always use scrapbook paper for the first page of a signature, usually because it's decorative and it's also sturdy. And then I'll use a second piece as a smaller page within each signature. So that's kind of how I go about. I kind of decide, I know I want a variety of scrapbook paper. I want a variety of plain coffee dyed paper. I'll want a variety of lined papers. I'll want a variety of interesting kind of miscellaneous papers. And sometimes to this grouping, I might add a piece of Braille paper or a page out of a yearbook, something along those lines. I almost always include text, a page from a book, and or a music page. Those are pretty standard also in my, when I create my signatures. And then I also usually will choose some sort of a decorative element for either the center of the signature or somewhere throughout. Sometimes I use a note card. It could be just an interesting piece of handmade ephemera. It might be a digital, something like that. As you can see, I've not used any digitals in here yet. And I may not in this journal, actually. I may use some digitals in the ephemera, but I don't think any of the pages are going to be digitals. But anyway, so I've got this, and then I always like to choose either envelopes or a bag or often a doily, things like that, as kind of an added, to add interest. So these are going to be the things from which I create my pages. And the way that I'll do that is I will take the measurement of my book, which for a Reader's Digest, they are 7.5 inches. And I will usually cut the paper a little bit shorter just to be sure that it's not hanging over the top or bottom. So for this, it'll probably be 7.25 inches tall and then about 5.25 inches wide on each side. So it would be 5, 10, 10.5 inches long. So I'll cut each of my papers, if they're larger than that, 7.25 by 10.5, fold them in half. The pages that are smaller, I'll just work in between the larger pieces, and I will create 3 8-page signatures from these papers. When I get those signatures created, I'll take my, this is essentially my spine, it's my hidden spine, and I will take my template, I will mark my holes, then I will take the same template and to each signature, and I will mark the holes in the signature, poke the holes, poke the hole in here, and then I will sew my signatures into this. So I'm going to do that part off camera, but when I get back to you, what I will show you is this piece with the 3 signatures sewn onto it. And then together I can show you how we glue it into the book. And then from there, what we'll have to do is add pockets and decorate. Okay? So just a short video here to let you know a little bit of my process. I am going to show you, in addition to the papers that I gathered, I'm going to show you a little bit of the fun stuff. I'm going to set this aside. A little bit of the fun stuff that I also gather when I am getting ready to do a journal. I have this Longaberger basket that I use And every time I start a new journal, I empty it out and then I fill it with the fun things like the washi tapes. I hope you can see this. Bits of ephemera, the tea bag that I'm going to use, extra envelopes, things that I might use, recipe cards. This is something that I'm thinking about using on the cover. It's a really pretty piece of metallic. I guess I used to call this like German scrap. I might use that on the cover. I have some other options of things I might use on the cover as well. Over here in this fun pouch, I accumulated some bits and bobs like little doily pieces, I have like little deer embellishments, buttons, things like that. And I have some things I can use to create pockets and ephemera. I have a couple of finished ephemera pieces, not many. Here's a pretty little handkerchief that I could use on the cover or somewhere in the journal. I have some really pretty gift wrap that I thought might end up covering a page. And I have all kinds of ephemera that I have started. I have a doily here, some note cards that I may use for pockets or whatever, ephemera pieces. I have stickers. I have a few digital pieces of ephemera, like some digital bottle caps, milk caps that are Christmas themed and things like that. I also pulled out, I'm going to scoot this back again out of frame. I also pulled out some of, I have an entire shoebox filled with Christmas rubber stamps, but I just pulled out a handful of those that I really seriously thought I might use. I have this, sorry I bumped you, I have this graphic 45 set that I think I found at a thrift store this year that I haven't used, that I thought, considering this is a kind of a vintage with more of a Victorian or an older style vintage, I thought these stamps might go well. And then I always pull out my handy dandy fun old tin with some littles. I've got some little paper flowers. I pulled out some charms, a few little beads. We're going to do a lot more beading. Sorry, I don't even know if you were able to see that. We're going to do more beading. I'll show you how I make my beaded elements and my fabric elements in another video, but I'm just kind of giving you an idea of what I pulled together. I have this pouch that has my Christmas fabrics in it. You can see some of the ones I used for my gingerbread. And I'll pull some of the more traditional fabrics to use for this journal. And I'll be making a fabric ruffle and a fabric flip. I try to have at least one nice fabric element in each of the signatures. I also pulled out, I haven't done this before, but I also pulled out some of my colored waxed thread for sewing in the signatures, and I thought I might use these colors in this journal when I sew the signatures in, so that's kind of fun. So anyway, these are the things that I've pulled, and I am going to go ahead and put my signatures together and trim my papers and sew them onto this, and I will be back soon to show you what that looks like, and we'll take the next step together. Okay? Thank you for joining me. Please let me know if you found this video helpful or at the very least interesting, and leave a comment. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for watching, and I will see you very soon. Bye-bye.